Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Hello and assalamu alaikum everyone. मैं हूँ इस्माइल कासिम and I welcome you all to another episode here at GNN Studios. बड़ी ही ख़ास एपिसोड है ये बिकॉज मेरे पास एक बहुत ही ख़ास मेहमान मौजूद हैं. इंटरनेशनल इंटेलेक्चुअल हैं, स्पीकर हैं, डिबेटर हैं और द आइडिया इज़ कि हम उनसे बातचीत करें, उनकी जर्नी के बारे में डिस्कशंस करें. आई हैव अब्दुल्ला अल अंदलूसी विद मी, बट वन थिंग दैट आई वांट टू मेंशन ओवर हियर दैट जो हमारी कॉन्वर्सेशन होगी विल बी ऑल इंग्लिश, सो यू हैव टू बेयर विद मी एंड अंडरस्टैंड कि दैट इज़ अ रिक्वायरमेंट. अब्दुल्ला, थैंक यू सो मच फॉर योर टाइम.
Thank you for having me on.
All right. Good to have you in Pakistan. Good to have you over here. I'll start off by asking you your journey. So as an international intellectual, a debater, a speaker, how has your journey been thus far? Also, keeping in mind the fact that as a revert, the challenges must be different, the journey must be different.
Well, if you talk about my journey to Pakistan, it's been very nice. Alhamdulillah. It's been quite hot. I arrived when the war started, I suppose. So that was apparently a rare situation where the two countries, India and Pakistan, were actually bombarding each other directly. And that hadn't happened since, I think, the war in the 1970s. So I had the rare opportunity of coming at the precise moment that problems kicked off. But apart from that...
The journey overall in life.
In life, okay. Alhamdulillah, what I can say is alhamdulillah for Islam, and it's given me purpose and direction to my life. And something that's sorely lacking in the West, amongst people who are Westerners, who are non-Muslim, they don't really have purpose. They're told they have to find a purpose in their life, but really, ultimately, it's meaningless. And so Islam is a great gift, and I think many people in the West need it urgently and desperately. Even if some of them have been conditioned by the media to be suspicious of Islam or to hate Islam, it actually is something they actually desperately need. It's a medicine they've been told not to take, but it's the only cure for their condition.
All right, it's the only cure for the westernized culture. All right, you say they lack intent, purpose. What do you mean by that? I mean, they've been told to find a purpose in their life, but as a Muslim, you found that purpose. What was that purpose?
Well, you have to understand what it's like, I suppose, for non-Muslims, where many of them, especially in secular countries, they've been told that your purpose in your life is to enjoy yourself. But you enjoy yourself by following your desires, but you don't really control your desires. And then you become a slave to people who can influence your desires through TV, advertisements, social culture, peer pressure, and so on. So what they don't realize is they're a slave to other things other than the one they should be a slave to, which is the creator of the universe, who's not human and is not going to manipulate them like humans would.
Absolutely.
So they are told that do these things that you have to, in your life, they'll give you meaning, it'll give you purpose, it'll give you direction. And what they don't realize is, but they begin to realize, or they maybe realize subconsciously, is that these things don't have any meaning to it. In a million years, nothing that they've ever would have done would have any meaning to it, any residual consequence. Whereas as Muslims, we know that every good deed we do and everything we do fi sabilillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, who never dies, will never die, will remember every single thing we do and will reward us forever for what we do. So our actions have eternal consequences and therefore meaning. So this is the things that people lack in the West. They lack any real meaning in their lives, and then when they realize this, they become depressed. That's why depression is an epidemic in the West. Ironically, the countries that are said to be the most happiest in the world, the Norwegian countries, so you have Scandinavian countries, Norway, Sweden, Finland, also have the highest amounts of antidepressants taking by the population.
That says a lot. So what motivated you to embrace Islam? How was your conversion like? I mean, you were just another westernized individual who had been fed the same things by the media and the peers and everyone else. So what changed for you?
Well, I mean, my family was basically, Portuguese immigrant into UK. So they were living in UK, and then they became British citizens. And I grew up in a Christian school. Church of England school. And up until about the age of 10 years old, I just thought of myself as a Christian. But most people in England who call themselves Christian, and most people around the world in Western countries, that is, that call themselves Christian, by and large, with the exception of America, because that's an exceptional situation there, are what we call nominal Christians. So they're Christian by name. They get married in churches. They go to funerals in churches, maybe a baptism in the church where they take the child to be officially, you could say, consecrated as a Christian. But other than that, Christianity doesn't really have much bearing on their lives, apart from maybe TV movies about the Bible. That's about it. So I was basically that until I was 10 years old. I mean, sure, my school they would teach, stories from the Bible here and there, but it was very just a bunch of stories.
Just for the sake of it.
I mean, probably the teachers were serious about it, but the kids and everybody else, it's not really a serious thing when people call it, and when I go to the Muslim world, I'm surprised at how people think that when the Christians call themselves Christians in the West, they adhere to Christianity as Muslims adhere to Islam. It's not the same. Christianity is just something which is more of a cultural legacy from the baggage from the background, which people don't view it as a baggage, but they view it as, well, this is what was the inheritance from my parents. So anyway, I was like that till 10 years old, and until I saw there was some people from different religions in England. There wasn't that many back then, but I also started to read. Well, I read loads of books anyway. I had a National Geographic subscription. It's a magazine called National Geographic, and I had a subscription to it. Kindly, because a neighbour actually paid for a subscription as a gift to me, and it would cover all kinds of topics around the world, different civilizations, history, and so on. So as biology and physics and everything, it covered like all kinds of things. And what I realized is that there's so many different religions in the world, different belief systems, different ideas, especially in history as well as geographically. So I just asked the question, how do I know that Christianity is correct? Like maybe another religion is correct. Am I a Christian just because of a geographical accident? Yeah, could I be a different religion if I was born somewhere else?
Absolutely, so easily.
And that's it. Then I started my journey reading every belief system I could find in an old-fashioned place called the library. And this is before the internet was big. And I read every book I could find on every belief system you can think of, and things you probably haven't heard of. New Age spirituality, latest cults, different ancient religions, everything. I read everything I could find. And Islam was one of those things where it was very basic, very simple, or it looked simple initially, at least in the books. And the books weren't written by Muslims; these were books written by maybe non-Muslim scholars about different religions. And so I thought, okay, well, I'll put Islam at the back of the pile. Let me go through these other religions, because Hollywood led me to believe that the truth was something mystical and mysterious, and you have to spend most of your life looking for it. But it doesn't make sense, because if the creator of the universe makes mankind, he should make the truth to be at least discoverable pretty easy. Accessible when you see it. At least when you see it, you would know it pretty quickly.
Absolutely.
So that was it. I researched different religions, Buddhism, the different religions of Hinduism, mutually contradictory religions of Hinduism, obviously different strands of Christianity, Judaism, and everything, Rastafarianism, things that you probably haven't heard of maybe, obscure religions, and then ultimately I bumped back into Islam at the very end of my journey. I love science. I've always loved science, I still do, because science has provided physical answers to explain the mechanisms of the physical world. But the problem is that the question was about what made the physical world and where did it come from and who set the rules. And science couldn't provide questions to that. So I thought, well, science is great to give me some quick answers, but it can't answer the ultimate answers, and I have to go look elsewhere for those answers. I'll still keep science in mind, and I still do. I love it. I keep up to date with the latest discoveries and so on. But I had to find it elsewhere. And then I bumped into Islam. And actually, I rediscovered Islam, because I already read about it. So I rediscovered it again. And I don't want to make a big story about it, but basically, there was a TV program at the time called Ally McBeal.
Right.
It was a TV series, a comedy kind of comedy series, rom-coms they call it, romantic comedy. So it was about a woman who was a lawyer, a professional lawyer, and she was in a law firm.
All right.
But there was guys there, and there was all this like sexual chemistry and sexual tension, sexual politics. Will they? Won't they get married, together? All this stuff, and it was all about the hilarious things that happen with the genders in a professional workplace. It was also about she was also trying to be a career woman, but also she wanted to be a mother, but she couldn't have both because the career is very demanding, which is a typical problem in the West. And then they wonder why their birth rates are going down. But that's a different discussion. So I saw that TV series, and then I was reading about Islam some more, and I encountered where it said that the women in Islam they wear the hijab and there's a covering for women. And so I asked the question, well, why does Islam want women to wear hijab? I don't get it. Like, why? What for?
Why would you want women to cover themselves?
Yeah. I just thought, why? I thought, well, if men designed Islam, or it comes from man, they'd probably say they want women to be uncovered because men like looking at women. So, like a shopping catalogue, you get to see all the products, and then you can say, oh, maybe I want this one and this one. Whereas if you're covered up, you can't see the products, right? This is very much the commercialized way. You could say that the Western world, in a sense.
That's the Western way to look at it, absolutely.
In a way, although they wouldn't officially say that's how they look at it.
That's the capitalistic way to look at it, maybe. That's how you sell commodities. And
well, it's all about selling
and
leverage.
And leverage.
And there's a saying in the West: if you got it, flaunt it. So if you've got some visual,
makes sense,
something visually nice about you, show it to the world, because that makes your value go up.
Absolutely.
If you have some kind of benefit, like a product.
Like a product.
So it's a unique selling point, right? That's it, yeah.
Right.
So I kind of realized that, well, what does Islam want to do when it covers women? And I realized, well, it looks like Islam is intending to remove sexuality from the public life. So if you go to a job or school, university, or just out about, sex is not there. But then sex shouldn't be there in the first place, because it just gets in the way of things. It just causes complications and problems. And like in the workplace, you want to focus on work. You don't want to think about sex or think about I fancy this person or this person. Or when you go on the street, maybe you have a girlfriend. And though I was young, I had girlfriends, but it wasn't. It obviously wasn't as an adult girlfriends, but it was girlfriends for 14 years old time.
The friends.
Yeah, something like that. It was basically, I realized that even if you have girlfriends at young age or any age, you're probably going to go on the street and look at, but what could I have got else? What could I have got better? Maybe I can, you buy a car, but then you drive it for a couple of years, you think, oh, there's other cars, maybe it's the better model, there's this, you want to swap it, right? So Islam just is aiming, it seems, to remove all that. Like, you know what? The only woman you're going to see in terms of is your family members or your wife, and that's it. So there'll be no regrets, there'll be no, I need to swap it later on. You can focus on work, you can focus on education, you don't have to think about sex, or it doesn't get involved. I thought that sounds pretty nice, actually. That makes sense in a way. It agrees more with human nature. It's a very enlightened way of managing humans. And then I thought, then that kind of sounds like what I expect a purpose in life and a truth to be. Not just tell you how, like, be good, be nice, and only be a believer once a week, going to church, going to the synagogue, going to the temple, going to the masjid, but rather what you do outside the masjid or outside the synagogue or whatever, living a life where society is organized according to that same purpose. Purpose in life means all of human life, all of human affairs.
Absolutely.
So because Islam was complete and it spoke about the totality of human existence, that was what I was expecting a purpose in life to do. And so, that makes more sense. And then I try to prove Islam wrong and try to find, is there any holes or contradictions? And sometimes when I see something that looks like a contradiction, and I focus on it, like, okay, let me think about this, and then I realize Islam has an answer to what I thought was a problem with it, and then a more deeper answer, and it's like, oh wow. So over time, I said, you know what? I think Islam is most likely the truth. So at 14 years old, I converted to Islam. I didn't have any Muslims to kind of really help me, to guide me much. So I had to rely on whatever books I could find. I didn't know that you have to officially testify the Shahada to become Muslim. I just thought you just believe in La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and that was it. So I believed in it. So my Shahada was me telling my mother, Mum, I think I'll be a Muslim. That's my Shahada, you could say. Because I didn't know you have to make an official declaration. Although I suppose when I started to learn to pray, I made the Shahada every single day, multiple times. But I didn't know many things. I had to learn it as I could find books and what I could find. And there wasn't that many books available, at least in the libraries. I didn't even know that like alcohol was haram until one year after I became Muslim. So that was it. I became Muslim, and then I think around about 17, 18, I encountered Muslims, and then my more serious study and deeper study of Islam began. And that's it.
And that's how you are here. You stated about something about believing in science and also in religion. How does one take along both? Because there usually you find a discussion between individuals that no, science says this and religion does that. And they try and take both of these as separate debates. However, there must be a convergence pattern between the two. Is there?
The argument that science contradicts religion or has a tension with religion was a atheist propaganda spin in the late 19th century. Okay. So before that, almost all science was conducted by people that believed in God and were devout Christians, and before that, devout Muslims. So for the vast majority of human history, science has been conducted by people who believed in revelation. And then, because in the West there was a rise of atheists, and then many atheists want to become scientists because because the fitrah is you want to pursue your truth, want to pursue truth. So if you don't believe there's a God, for you the only avenue to pursue truth, the only way to be a priest as an atheist is maybe you go into science or what have you. The problem is they bring their assumptions and biases into science. And what we find is atheists have actually been corrected many times by theists. I'll give you one example. So the Big Bang theory, as they call it, the idea that the universe started, or at least it had a point where it was different to what we see. It wasn't eternally the same. It started at a very small point of dense matter, dense energy, sorry. This was resisted by Albert Einstein, who was a kind of atheist, maybe. He believed that the universe was eternal. And if it's eternal, it doesn't need to be created by a creator, right? So he believed that. And then a Belgian scientist who was also a Catholic priest, Georges Lemaitre, a Catholic priest and scientist, showed some of the equations to explain why there is a change in wavelengths of light to red light called redshift, which is best explained by basically that the universe is expanding. And if expanding, then it means it was at a small point at some point in the universe, which suggests it kind of was created at some point. So Albert Einstein famously said, I hate your conclusion, but I respect the mathematics. Now, the maths wasn't 100% proof just yet. It was an explanation. But then later on, it was discovered that, yes, the observations from the redshift and the universe all show almost overwhelmingly that the universe is expanding and therefore had a small point. Now it's called the Big Bang. The word Big Bang was actually, an atheist scientist used this to actually mock the idea. What's this idea of the Big Bang? But we now take it as a word we use. Yeah.
That's a theory now.
So the Catholic priest, who was also a scientist, was right, and Einstein was wrong. See? Because the atheists wanted to bring their assumptions into science, whereas the science showed something else. So the idea that there's a clash between science and religion is false.
Absolutely. What a beautiful way to put it. So having a discussion about, since you brought it up, about the atheists, we see a new trend in the society as well. I mean, many far left, you would want to say, or the secular liberals in the societies. I mean, it's okay to be one of that if you want to be, but at the same time, there are those who cross the extremes and go to extreme lengths and eventually end up thinking that maybe I want to be an atheist. Some even want to say that they want to be an agnostic. They believe that there is a higher supreme power, but they're just not sure about who it is or what it is. How do you handle such individuals if you ever encounter them?
Well, I mean, there's two ways. One way is you treat the argument of the atheist belief as an atheist, or I know in Urdu, or means and, right? You also treat the pathway that led them to being atheists, which is secularism. Now, I would argue that it's not a coincidence that when the West adopted secularism and liberalism, it became more atheist, at least in European countries, mostly. In America, it's a little bit different because the Christians are quite strong there. And there's a big war between, a cultural war between the Christians and secular liberal atheists. But you see, if you believe that society is best served by separating religion from the affairs of society, you're basically saying that religion causes problems if you bring it into the affairs of humans. But if the religion concerns the purpose of life and the purpose of humans and their society and their affairs, you're basically saying that this religion is insufficient to deal with human affairs. And therefore, what's the logical conclusion? It's not a true religion then. If it was from God, it could manage everything. It could guide us in everything ethically.
All right, so I have a point over here. I don't think it's meant to be looked at in that perspective. Through the lens from where I am looking at it, I believe that since religion has been exploited in the society, has been used as a tool, hence it should be separated from the matters of the state. But as an individual, you can never, ever think of separating religion.
The problem with that is it confuses two things. Corrupt politicians making excuses to justify policies, and religion. The corrupt politicians who make excuses to justify policies happens all the time in any situation, secular, religious, it doesn't matter. That's what they do, right? They just use whatever the values or the ideas are of that society to justify whatever policy that they want to do. So to say, well, the only solution for this is we separate religion from this, they just find a new set of ideas and values. Nationalism, secularism. I mean, for example, India, and probably lead into this, but India justifies its harsh policies against Muslims using secularism.
Absolutely, but that image has been tarnished.
True, but they make the argument, and France does the same thing.
France does the same thing.
It makes bans on women wearing hijabs and things in the name of secularism. So religion, the issue is not about religion can be misused by politicians, but rather the question is, does religion give us better solutions for mankind in our affairs? And can the people control and contain their politicians from abusing the values of their society? Whether those values are religious values and ideas and solutions, or they are materialistic ones. So I would say, well, since you're going to have bad politicians anyway at some point, which system minimizes those politicians? I'd say the fact that we have so many history books talking about the great leaders in the past, Salahuddin Ayyubi, the four Khulafa Rashid, or even Umar Abdulaziz al-Thani, the second Umar Abdulaziz, the great Khulafa in the past. We look at how great they were. This is under Islam. This is where there's no secularism. Under secularism, what do we have today? Well, I'm not going to name names, but I don't think we have a long list of great politicians today who are secular that we praise and look up to. We have a list of corrupt politicians, corrupt families, corrupt circles of people controlling power in every Muslim country and in many non-Muslim countries as well, the same corrupt politicians. So secularism has not really produced good politicians, but Islam has produced some great politicians and great leaders.
Absolutely. There's no argument about it. But my question is the same over there. What about the agnostics and the atheists?
So, I mean, what about them? They became that way, and it happened in the West that way, because if religion is viewed as too much trouble in society, it's not a good solution. Right?
So
Religion gives guidance.
All right.
Okay. So when they removed it, they said they will get guidance from something else, liberalism, communism, what have you. But then how can Karl Marx or John Locke, for example, have better guidance than Isa alayhi salam or the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam or what have you? Because of that, because they saw their parents, their society not wanting to go to these religions and instead go towards these thinkers who were not prophets and just making ideas up and speculating about things, they thought, well, then all religion is man-made, and these religions, we don't use them anymore because maybe they're in the past, so we use the more recent thinkers because it's all just humans making things up. So that's why they would become secular, they'll become atheist and agnostic. But also, if you're liberal, by the way, and everyone forgets this, liberalism is a complete deen, and I don't say this in it for a good thing. I say it's a dangerous thing for Muslims, as it was for Christians, because liberalism doesn't just say be free in this life. Liberalism ultimately says be free in any life. So the hereafter too.
So there are
but
no
how can you be
restrictions.
free if there's a God that has expectations on you, right? That punishes you for things that are not physically hurting other people. Let's say, or you don't do enough prayers, or you have a same-sex relationship. Well, they say, well, why would the creator of the universe care about this, and why can't I be free? So to be free, or at least to pretend to yourself that you're free, you just think, well, maybe I don't know he exists, maybe he doesn't exist, and become agnostic or atheist. That's the logical conclusion to an illogical presupposition, a logical assumption. You make the illogical assumption, and then you take it to its logical conclusion. So atheism and agnosticism, that's where it comes from. That's why in the West you have a rise of atheists and a rise of agnostics. It's not a coincidence. That happened in the West when they adopted secularism and liberalism. Even then in America, even though there's a lot of strong Christians there, there's reasons for that. I won't go into it, but there's a majority, you could say, of people in America who are basically not Christian, and those that are keeping the Christianity levels high in America are Spanish Catholic, Hispanic, immigrants coming in from a Christian Catholic background with traditional values, coming in to kind of keep the numbers of Christianity up, up and not from declining.
So it's one thing to see the rising number of atheists and agnostics in the Western society. What about those individuals? I mean, say something belonging to the South Asian countries, who have a more Muslim outlook, not in application, but at least on paper as well.
I'd say it's starting to happen for the same reasons.
The confusion. There's a confusion.
Well, we have secular systems in the Muslim world. The Muslim world is by and large secular, with some laws which are called cultural laws from its past. Laws which are kept because they're cultural laws for social stability, not because the highest interest of the state is Allah's pleasure. So there's no Muslim country who says its highest national interest is the pleasure of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The highest national interest is usually maintaining the state, just continuing to exist, and more specifically to keep the regime in power, which is the more specific purpose of the regimes that rule the state. So that's why these regimes, if some of them, if you try to kick them out of power, they'll destroy the state. If I can't have it, no one can.
If I can't have it, no one can.
Yeah. That shows they're not really there to serve the people, and they're certainly not there to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala.
They very rarely are. So talking about the regimes and the geopolitical intricacies, how did you find the Pakistan-India conflict since you landed in the same days when India tried to compromise our sovereignty? How did you find that?
Well, subhanAllah, I was very overjoyed to see that there was, Pakistan was actually, fighting back, giving as good as it can get for the most part, bombarding Indian air bases when they bombarded Pakistani air bases, and taking out a few Indian planes as well. I found that obviously quite funny. I think I made a small YouTube video about the fantastic tea of Pakistan. I recommend it to all Indian pilots as well. So yeah, Pakistan has been providing a very good service to Indian pilots, helping them test out the ejection seats of their making sure they work. just to
Making
check
sure
it,
they work.
And even so much as you don't even have to come into Pakistan airspace. We'll do it for free in your airspace. So that was yeah. So alhamdulillah. But where I was at the time, which was right next to the Indian border, Sialkot, people were just having normal day-to-day lives. If I didn't look at the news, I wouldn't know anything was happening. The people was just normal.
People were very calm.
Yeah, they were just normal, average, like it was a Tuesday, as they say. And
it was a normal, another Tuesday.
Yeah.
But overall, the Indian secular image has been tarnished. So the BJP ruled Hindutva ideologies, the RSS fanaticism. So you see, it has, what do you say? It has damaged India's secular identity across the world because they claim to be the biggest democracy, biggest secular democracy. And it has been destroyed. How do you see that?
Well, you see, I think it's because of secularism and its cousin, nationalism. So nationalism states that the state represents the nation. What's a nation?
They can do that. That's not a Muslim majority state. So that's a Hindu state with other religions. So they can do that, no?
Well, here's the problem. The question is, what is a nation? And what nation does the state represent? That's what nationalism is. Nationalism is about the idea that the states should be based on nations. That works well if everyone is of the same language group and ethnicity and religion and cultural background. If that's the case, fine. It usually works kind of okay. But if you have a minority and they get big over time, or from immigration, or they exist there beforehand, it's a matter of time before people say, well, that minority, they have to conform to the majority. You could say it's very much part of democracy for the majority to dominate over the minority. And you see that in India, it manifests, because they have multiple different ethnic groups. So the ruling party found a way to unite them using the RSS or the Sanghi ideology, as they say, which is, okay, what defines us is that we are a people who are native to this land. And if we're native to this land, what unites us as natives is, well, we follow the same cultures and religions of this land, Hinduism. But then they say, well, what about Islam and Christianity? Well, they're not native for this land. So they're foreign religions, foreign people then. Even if the people, their DNA, ancestry, the same as their other cousins or brothers in terms of ethnicity. But also in Pakistan, you see the same problems as for secularism and liberalism. Which ethnic group does Pakistan stand for? Now, on paper, in theory, Pakistan was based on Islam. Right, so it's based on the Muslims being Muslims. But what people noticed is that well, Punjabis seem to be privileged more in the state, Pashtun less, Sindh less, Balochi less.
Even less.
And so the Balochis will say, well, us Balochis as a nation, we deserve our own nation state because Pakistan seems to be a nation state of Punjabis. This is all from nationalism. Right? Nationalism causes this. It causes people to prioritize one group over another group because the state must represent a nation, and you can't have the official language being everyone's language. It has to be one particular language, one particular custom, culture. That's why nationalism causes endless civil wars. Myanmar or Burma, right? It's currently having 3 civil wars at the moment due to 3 ethnic groups clashing with the majority ethnic group. Right? India, as I said, there are actually many separatist movements in India. So this is why you could say the BJP are trying to use the idea of, well, look, we're all Hindus and we don't like Muslims. Let's unite on that. Rather than what would normally be the case, India would split up into separate ethnic countries because it's multiple nations. We say the two-nation theory. In a sense, it's more like the multiple nation theory. They're all multiple nations. The people in the south are very different to those in the north, as you know, from Tamils and other ones, Dravidians. I digress, but basically, nationalism and secularism has produced more problems throughout the world. Even though it was a European import, it might work well in some European countries. Technically, it's also caused problems in Europe, but they imported it into the world around the world they colonized, and we have the resulting problems amongst us, constant instability all over the world.
All over the world. So finally, before leaving, I have one last question for you regarding the Israel-Palestine conflict. Do you see any end to it?
The Israel-Palestine conflict, I mean, just highlights my point. Israel was set up to be a nation state. Again, nationalism. Nation state, but a nation state for Jews. And the problem was, for them anyway, Palestine at the time of 1947, 1948, majority was non-Jews. So what do you do if you want to make a nation state and the majority of people are not your ethnic group? Well, they say, well, we don't want to live under these Palestinians as a minority group, so we're going to kick them out. We're going to push them out. We're going to pressure them until we can reduce their number to a manageable number. And then when we have a small minority, that'd be good. We can make them do the low-paying jobs. We need a lower caste. They can do the construction, the dangerous stuff, and so on and forth. So that'll be good, cheap labor. So that was what they did, and this led to all the conflict that we see today. However, the Zionists were aware that they didn't just come to the Middle East from the Middle East being like it was at the time. Britain had done some sculpting work in the Middle East. It had destroyed the Uthmani Khilafah, the Khilafah of the Muslims, and split them into smaller states with puppet governments whose express job is to manage a small chunk of the Muslim world which is controllable and easy to dominate by a foreign power, usually the British Empire. They didn't think they would collapse. What happened was that the Zionists realized that there's many Muslims in the Muslim world want to undo that and reunite the Muslims. So they naturally see that Islam is a threat to Zionism, because if the Muslim world unites, they're next going to come after Israel. So Benjamin Netanyahu, the Prime Minister of Israel, has publicly talked about the danger of Islam. The danger, he says, that those they're fighting against want a caliphate back. And he tells the West, you need to support us because we're the ones who are fighting to prevent a caliphate in the Muslim world. And he himself has said, and he's very clever at playing religions against each other. He'd say, when fighting against Hezbollah, he'd say, I'm doing a favor for the Sunnis of the region. But then in Syria and many other countries, he'd say, we're protecting the minorities from the Sunnis, and so on. So he would say, and he has said many times, that Sunnis and where he needs to, Shias, they are fighting against it. So they are fighting against Islam, Khilafah, Sunnis. That's what they've said, basically.
Very clever way to put it.
Oh, yes, yeah. So for their own words, they'll say Islam is the problem. They are the
genocide is not.
What? Oh, yeah. They'll say they're just defending themselves against the Palestinians. And they themselves have made it out to be a religious war. It's a war against Islam. They are defending the West from Islam. That's why they tell the West, you need to support us, because if we fall, you're next. Now, that's ridiculous, because the West, it's not like, the West has nuclear weapons.
It's a very ridiculous assumption, absolutely. Yeah. But at the same time, is it a political war or a more ideological religious war? I mean, everybody sees it for what it is, but the narratives are being portrayed in both sides.
Well, it's in a sense, it's both, because there are different factions that have different motivations. So an atheist or a secular Zionist would simply say it's about ethnicity and the cultural identity. So Jews must have a land for themselves that they rule, because that's the only way to guarantee their safety from non-Jews who've persecuted them in Europe. Well, it's like, well, the Middle East, we're not Europe, but they're Europeans. They came from Europe into Palestine, and they said, well, we're safe here from the European Christians, basically. And so for them, it's an ethnic war, an ethnic conflict, an ethnic domination, racial domination of non-Jewish Arab Palestinians. But then you have religious Zionists who are a growing faction and are a very big faction. They're the ones that are actually keeping the Netanyahu government together in terms of the coalition of parties and peoples. And for them, it is a religious war. They say, God gave us this land. This whole land belongs to us. We should rule, and we should kick out these non-Jews who it's not their land. And in fact, the Bible, they'll say, and they said this, the Bible gives us permission to do whatever we need to do to kick him out.
And like killing children.
And
what is wrong with them?
Many of there are many Zionist religious rabbis who have actually said that the Torah and what have you, their book, the Tanakh and their religious texts, Talmud, give express permission to even target children, to target women and so on, because and they cite an example from, and Benjamin Netanyahu cited this, the example of the people of Amalek, which were people who were massacred, men, women, and children. The ancient Israelites were commanded to wipe out men, women, and children of the Amalek peoples who were an enemy of the Israelites. So Benjamin Netanyahu himself said, we're fighting Amalek. He said it publicly. Right? That's a genocide. And they believe that their religion allows them to kill women and children. I've seen many of such Zionist rabbis who follow Benjamin Netanyahu's thinking have said and given examples and interpretations from their works. And this is all perfectly legal in the Jewish laws of war.
They will face Allah's wrath in this world and hereafter.
Inshallah, the question is whether we as Muslims, collectively, as our states together, will be the agents of that wrath. Or do we just do nothing?
And a very good point you made.
Should we say, when India bombed and attacked Pakistan, did we respond and say, Allah will deal with them?
No.
We said Allah will deal with them, and we will be, inshallah, the agents of Allah's response to them.
What a beautiful way to put it. I mean, I understand, आप समझें इस बात को, वो कहना क्या चाह रहे हैं कि इजराइल पैलेस्टाइन की जब आप बात करते हैं तो जब इंडिया ने पाकिस्तान पे हमला किया तो हमारी सॉवरेनिटी कॉम्प्रोमाइज़ हो रही तो हमने जवाब दिया. एट द सेम टाइम आप स्ट्रैटेजाइज कर लें, रीएवैल्यूएट कर लें, एक स्टेप बैक कर लें, बट कोई पॉलिसी बनाएं तो सही कि जहाँ पे वहाँ मुसलमान बच्चे बुज़ुर्ग ख़वातीन शहीद हो रही हैं, कोई कुछ तो करें एटलीस्ट. स्टेप तो बात की बात है, कोई कंक्रीट पॉलिसी तो बनाएं, एटलीस्ट कंडेमनेशन तो करें. Anyway, Abdullah, thank you so much for your time. This has been a wonderful discussion. I would have loved to have, I just enjoyed the conversation. I really liked it.
Barakallahu feekum for having me on. And as I said, I've really enjoyed my stay in Pakistan, and I've really, I love the brothers, my sisters in Pakistan because they're my Muslim brothers and sisters. And anywhere a Muslim goes, I don't feel like a stranger because we're part of the same ummah. But what I've seen here when I come to Pakistan is I've grown extra in love with what I've encountered here from the people. Mm-hmm. Very humble, mashallah. The food is very good. But also I see a lot of khair, a lot of potential in Pakistan. And I feel that when I see some of the problems in Pakistan, I see that, Islam could be Islam is the solution. And I would really much like to, and I could do this in every Muslim country I go to, but I think that Muslims here, as well as around the Muslim world, once we really wake up to understand that Islam can give us real solutions, not just in a personal or private capacity, but social and political and economical capacities, solutions for land distribution, for utilization of resources, through adapting our technology and developing our industry, which is from the Sunnah, by the way. The Prophet Muhammad improved the technology of the people of Medina, sent people to learn sword making in Yemen to come back and improve their weapons, and things like this. So there's so much solutions, and I see that Pakistan, like many other Muslim countries, is suffering under secularism and nationalism. And I really see a very beautiful Islamic future for Pakistan. And I think that Pakistan, and like Turkey and many of these countries, can be the leaders of the Muslim Ummah, have that great potential. They can actually be the leading countries of Muslim Ummah with our own industries. You have the nuclear weapons, you have your own weapons industry. Turkey has its own weapons industry. Iran has a spaceport. Like, these are, industry, this is infrastructure. You guys can be the leaders of the Muslim world. You just need to take it, just need that will there, and to say, you know what, let's stop playing the same game we've been playing for all these years with the same corruption and the same this. How can Islam solve our situation? Don't wait for, one leader or a Mahdi to come or what have you. Mahdi's going to come in his own time. I've heard that from many Muslims. But rather prepare the way, right, and make the right situation inshallah, when the Mahdi comes, as the hadith says, there already will be a khilafah established. By the time he arrives, there already will be khulafa and khalif. So let's bring that about.
Be the agents
inshallah.
of the change that you want implemented here.
Individually as well as publicly and socially. That means, and I think fundamentally boiling it down to, like I did as a revert, the Muslim world has forgotten its purpose. And we need to rediscover our purpose in life. And once we do that, we realize that everything else doesn't have any meaning, only Islam.
There's a lot of economic aspect to it as well. The capitalistic society that we thrive in, I'm not sure, what is the word for sood in English? पता नहीं शायद आपको ज़हन में हो. So sood is haram in Islam, right? So I cannot remember the English word for it, or maybe I can try and look for it over here online. So, but the point that I'm trying to make is, how do we do, since all this is against Islam? The talk that you make is absolutely fine and beautiful, but presently, in the dynamics of the nation-state system, where does one start from? That's the point. I'll also look for the word sood in English as well.
Well, the very simple matter is
interest. I'm so sorry.
Oh,
interest.
riba. Yes.
So sorry.
Yes.
Just interest. So my point was, in the capitalistic riba and sood is everywhere. So interest is everywhere. I mean, it's in the banking system. It's everywhere. The economic aspect of it.
Well, I mean, I've done lectures online called if you just type my name in, Abdullah Al Andalusi, economic system. I've done lectures at UK universities on the Islamic economic system, the details of it, and comparing it to capitalism and communism. And so because that's a lecture in itself. If your viewers want to go see, please check it out. It's there. But to suffice to say, Islam has a different approach to wealth. So it doesn't mean being rich is bad. No, you can be rich. People need a profit incentive, as well as I often say, a prophet incentive, a prophet, right? Yeah. Which is revelation. So you can have wealth, not a problem. You can look for nice things. You can buy a nice car. You can have a nice house, not a problem. However, what you see with interest banking is it leads to concentration of wealth that deprives the poor people, or where they don't have enough wealth to support themselves. I give a very quick explanation. So basically, you have rich people, let's just say the rich people, banks, whatever, they lend money to the poor people. To one person, say maybe you make a shop. Here, you make a shop. You yourself, you sell to your fellow poor people, and you get money, and you make profit, and you're a good shopkeeper. That's good for you. But now you have to pay me back. So that money has to go back with interest. So where's the net flow of money going between the rich and poor? It's going more to the rich. So the poor become poorer and poorer and poorer. Sure, the West has some welfare systems in many countries, but tax can't cover all the poor people. Especially the health system in England is collapsing, by the way. It's a very bad health system. Many of us have to go outside of England to get a better treatment, because you'll be on waiting lists for just having a tooth change or checkup, whatever, 6 months sometimes. So there's these issues there. So Islam says, okay, better way, right? Which is, firstly, riba is banned. Instead, you have types of investment. If you need a loan, okay, have a loan. You can maybe share the risk. The rich person shares the risk with the poor person. So if he doesn't make enough money, he doesn't still have to pay the person back and sell his house and sell his car and all this kind of stuff. Or you have mudaraba, you have musharaka. You have things where, say, you need a car to go to work for your work. Okay, maybe you're given money and you pay a little bit, but the other guy pays the majority, and you rent the car at a very, very low rate, but you pay rent on the car, and then you can buy your portion back from that person, or you sell it. Whereas England, let's say, example, you get a house, the bank gives you the money for the house, but the bank can take the house if you stop paying or you default. And now in Islam, if the bank takes your house, then they have to give you the money back, because it's an incomplete transaction. You give me money for the house, fine, okay, I can't pay you. I return the house back to you. You return me my money. The contract was incompleted.
That doesn't happen.
No, they keep the money you've paid and take your house, and they sell it off. And so for them,
even if
profit.
the last installments are missed, they get to keep the rest of the 90% that you had already paid.
Yeah, it's a scam in a way. And also, by the way, I'm not sure of the house prices and what in Pakistan are like, but in England, America, they're very, very high. And the reason why they're very high is because people are able to pay for it in some way. And the reason why people are able to pay for it is because of these massive loans that put them in debt. So people have to pay inflated prices on houses because they're given, they have the ability to pay those prices by being given massive loans that they will have to spend the rest of their life, 20, 30 years, 40 years paying off. And sometimes they won't be able to pay it off. They'll die before they pay it off, and then they lose the house anyway. That's the circumstance of people in the West. Now, in this current generation, younger generation, they've given up the idea that they'll ever own their houses, actually. It's called generation rent, they call it. They just will, the rest of their life, they're just going to be expecting to rent. They will never own their house. All this is due to the capitalist system leading to its logical conclusion, where you have, in the world today, 1% of the population owns 50% of the world's wealth, and 50% of the world's population owns 1% of the world's wealth. Now look, you can have rich people in Islam, not a problem. But when you have such concentration of wealth,
that's a problem.
To the point that people are deprived of it.
That's a problem.
That's the problem. Now, I don't know much about the Pakistani economic system. I've heard that they're going to phase out interest banking in a couple of years' time, I think.
I've been hearing that for the past 2 or 3 decades.
Promises. But I've heard things like, for example, there are people, landlords that have massive territories, land, and they do nothing with it. They just control it, own it, what have you. In Islam, if you don't use territory for 3 years, you lose it, and it gets redistributed to someone who will use it. So a poor person says, look, I want a farm. Then you get that farm. If it's a national resource, oil, lots of water, what have you, no one can privately own it. Even the state can't own it. It's actually public property. The state can only manage it on behalf of the public. That means the state, if it needs to get extraction of that, like for example, oil, let's just say, then the state, that oil belongs to everybody, and all the state can do is provide it to you at the cost price. So look, the state said, look guys, we have to spend money extracting it and refining it for you guys, even though it's your property. So for that service, you just pay for just what it costs for us to take it and give it to you. Right? But it's yours. And if we have to sell it, maybe there'll be, with a referendum, what have you, they sell it, that belongs to you. And like Norway, I think it was Norway, Norway had something called a sovereign fund. They had oil, they discovered oil, they extracted it. It wasn't that much, they extracted as much as they could, and then they made it into the money into the profit to the public's wealth, and then they invested it across the world, and the profit from that goes into the national income, so it belongs to the people, called a sovereign wealth fund. That is what Islam basically advocates. And just as the tip of the iceberg of the economic solutions that
Absolutely.
Islam gives.
That's just the tip of the iceberg. So if you guys need more information on the economic system of Islam and views of Abdullah Al Andalusi, do you have a YouTube channel?
Yes, yeah, just type in my name, Abdullah Al Andalusi. You find it.
Go to his YouTube channel, Abdullah Al Andalusi, and you'll find his content and views over there. Thank you so much for your time. लुकिंग फॉरवर्ड कि आप लोगों को डिबेट कैसी लगी इसको कमेंट सेक्शन में ज़रूर बताइएगा मुझे इस्माइल कासिम को इजाज़त दीजिए अपना बहुत सारा ख्याल रखिए अंटिल नेक्स्ट टाइम जी अल्लाह हाफ़िज़